Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War news update for the 14th of February 2024. Might not be the 14th for all of you. It is for me at the moment in Ukraine from where I am recording. Right, let's get straight to where we normally start. Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before, all the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video below. And you can see that there are some heavy losses for the Russians, no doubt concerning the activities in places like Avdiivka, where the Russians are attacking. And it's also worth noting that the Ukrainians are struggling to defend. So the Ukrainians will be, in fact, I know the Ukrainians have had some significant losses in particularly Avdiivka in the last 2 to 3 days. It is pretty horrendous for them there at the moment. So although these are really high numbers for the Russians, you can guarantee that the numbers for the Ukrainians will be uh, probably just as high, maybe even more. I don't know. I have heard from some sources that last 3 days in Avdiivka have been worse than the whole year in Bakhmut. So make of that what you will. That could be exaggeration, and if so, it's still probably based on some kind of reality whereby the Ukrainians are getting an absolute mauling in some areas of Avdiivka, or in Avdiivka in some way. So we know that the KAB or CARB bombs, those aviation guided glide bombs, are having great effect, and there's nothing the Ukrainians can do about that. We know that the Russians are having some very accurate artillery working in Avdiivka, that some of their best troops have been pulled to Avdiivka. They sense that this is a moment where they can capitalize on uh, overwhelming forces there, and the Ukrainians having to pull back. As a result, the Ukrainians will be losing large numbers of troops. However, just from this data set, the Ukrainians have taken some pretty high casualties from the Russians. 8 tanks is added to that, 27 APVs, which is a pretty significant number there, and 19 artillery systems. That's an uptick from yesterday's relatively low numbers. We talked about how that was possibly a result of it being a Monday, and that's often the case. Now, one anti-aircraft warfare system is there too, as well as 24 vehicles and fuel tanks and 4 pieces of special equipment. So, Andrew Perpetua's lost stats list looks like this, and that is at least a 2-to-1 ratio loss, Russian to Ukrainian losses here. So, if we look at the Ukrainian losses, let's try and work out where the value is. Now, interestingly, he's added those 2 HIMARS that have been uh, loaded onto that cargo plane to be taken somewhere to be fixed. It's not significant, uh, not significant damage at all, really, but they are going to be taken out of usage for some time. A couple of boats on there, as we often see. M777 artillery piece, a couple of other artillery pieces. BMP-1 and a Bradley. So Bradley's fairly high value. Now, when we go to the Russian losses, there's a TOS-1 thermobaric munition, which, wow, that blew up big time. I'll show you that, or at least I'll reference it in a second. I can't show you the videos, otherwise I will get restricted. Now, when we look at the tanks, there's quite a few tanks lost there, including a T-90S. That's a T-90, not the most recent version. That's an export variant, abandoned then destroyed. T-72s, T-80, so quite a few tanks, a few infantry fighting vehicles of various descriptions, a number of APCs, sorry, MRAP, and then some trucks and civilian vehicles as well. So, value wise, the Russians will have lost more than the Ukrainians, although you could say the Ukrainians have lost 2 HIMARS, which is incredibly high value, but they're not lost. They're just out of action for some time. Of course, you can say that with any number of these vehicles that are listed as damaged. So that's worth bearing in mind. Okay, moving on to uh, Avdiivka itself, I could show you this video. It is evidence of some serious glide bomb action in Avdiivka, where they are getting one heck of a hammering. As far as I'm concerned, that is the area in Avdiivka. So this is the area past Starska Ochota, where the Russians have captured this area. They're also coming in from the north around here to the east of the coke plants. But to bomb this area, what's quite depressing about this is the area where the civilians are remaining. This is the where they generally still live. The few that live there, uh, last count was about 1,000 people. I don't know if that's still the case, but to drop guided glide bombs on that section of the city is, I think, potentially egregious. This is how Russia is operating in Avdiivka, dropping glide bombs over and over, destroying cities, razing them to the ground before trying to enter. A common Russian strategy. In this video, the ninth quarter of Avdiivka is being bombed heavily. Uh, and here's that TOS 1A that was destroyed. Epic detonation performed by a Russian tank as a result of a hit. No, actually, this is not the TOS 1A. This is a tank that has gone boom. Um, the TOS 1A is actually, I showed it yesterday, I believe. So, yeah, apologies. This is just another tank, but my goodness, just goes to show if you hit tanks just right, the munitions blow up in the way that in a certain way, then you get huge explosions like that. Now, I've included this not in distance strikes. I think this is a fire, and almost certainly then partisan activity, very significant. Don't know how much damage is done at all. There's a fire burning there, as you can see, at a MiG plant in Leningradsky Avenue in Moscow, allegedly on fire, according to Russian Telegram channels. According to preliminary data, the fire broke out, quote, in a reconstructed workshop attached to the plant's operating building. In particular, the outbreak occurred on the second and third floors of the building. The cause of the fire is still unknown. Staff were evacuated. As of now, the open fire has reportedly been put out, but the roof continues to smolder, Russian Telegram channels report. So it was taught the other day in the British intelligence updates, mentioning how with these factories, facilities, industrial military complex facilities working in Russia, 24/7, extra shifts. You're going to be drafting in people who are not used to doing that work. People are going to be tired from working long hours. There could be mistakes happening, but I think it goes beyond that. I think there's definitely going to be some kind of sabotage taking place. It's just too coincidental for there to be this many fires in this many um, sensitive construction manufacturing facilities in Russia. Now, there are reports that a Ukrainian military helicopter, likely a Mi 8 or Mi 24, has been shot down by the Russians near Robotyne on the Zaporizhia front. According to available information, there are no killed in action among the crew, only wounded. Russian channels claim that the helicopter was downed with an ATGM, although this cannot be currently verified. So it's an anti tank guided missile rather than a manpads. Just goes to show that there's so much uh, weaponry going around that you can quite often co-opt one piece to do the job of another. And General Tarnavsky has issued a statement dismissing Russian disinformation about alleged Ukrainian losses near Selidova in Donetsk region. He labels it as Russian IPSO information psyops and emphasizes that it aims to divert attention from significant losses incurred by Russian forces in the Taurida direction. Now, what the claims are? The claims are that a training center for Ukrainians with over 1,000 uh, trainee soldiers was hit by Russian munitions, hit big time, took out a load of people, and then as they came to sort of medivac and collect the dead and injured, they were hit again. This has been circulated quite widely. I mean, a Russian troll put it on my thread, to be honest. So there is a lot of talk about this. The Ukrainians have come out and flatly denied it and called it just massive Russian disinformation tactics. I often think there's probably an element of truth in these when they are claimed. Although I was talking to Pierre today, and he was saying, well, the interesting point is that this is the perfect time to hit with outright disinformation. So Ukrainians are cracking in certain areas. Things are not going well. They've had 4 months of not having any um, equipment of any meaningful quantities from the US. They're struggling to get stuff from EU as they're ramping up production, and it's all very challenging. So if you throw in a curveball like this, Russia can maybe help to add to those cracks in the Ukrainian defense in terms of morale and so on and so forth. On the other hand, like, do they make something like this up out of thin air and then expect it to be okay when nothing comes of it? I don't know. That's why I often think there's probably an element of truth in some of these claims, but we shall see. It'll obviously be highly significant for the Ukrainians if that is anywhere near true. Right. uh, Now, distant strikes. This is the news that 16 out of the 23 Shaheeds, seems so long ago now, were destroyed by Ukraine's air defense forces this night. The drones were shot down within the borders of Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. So I was speaking to a a Ukrainian volunteer who used to be in the Soviet uh, armed forces as a submariner, as a diver, actually, off submarines and whatnot. And he was saying something, and Zhenya was translating it, basically saying that the guy's been shooting shahids, but the way that he said shahids sounded exactly like, yeah, he's been shooting at shitheads. And I was like, yeah, sounds about right. Anyway, just lost in translation. Um, uh, that's one of my anecdotes from today. Yeah, let's move on. Air Force, Ukraine drones shot down 16 drones overnight. So they were, um, well, a number of places were targeted, but it was mainly Dnipro that was the primary target. It's now thought that Ukraine's third biggest city by population um, was targeted. Mayor Boris Filatov said infrastructure was hanging by a thread after the drone attack. A thermal power station was badly damaged, water and power is off in some areas. Indeed, I believe hospital has been evacuated and schools are closed because of the lack of critical infrastructure like heating and water and whatnot to those places. This is really significant in Dnipro, which is the biggest city in Ukraine. Yeah, at night in the city, there were revivals at the power plant and infrastructure facilities. Um, Stations stopped generating electricity. So, yeah, evacuation of those facilities there. So that is bad news for Dnipro and for the Ukrainians. Uh, Further to that, the other day I reported that an oil depot in or near Kharkiv, up in the north of Ukraine, the second biggest city in Ukraine, was hit, and it appears to have been a significant hit on Ukrainian infrastructure there. The Russian drone attack on an oil depot in Kharkiv overnight on February 10th led to a fuel leak that has contaminated over 10,000 square meters of land. Serhiy Bolvinov, the head of the investigative department of the regional police, said a couple of days ago now, actually. Right, Russian attacks against Ukraine kill 4 and injure 11 over the past 24 hours. So this is Kharkiv again um, getting targeted. I think I thought it was. Maybe not. And then it goes in one of the latest strikes, 2 male civilians were killed and 2 more people were wounded in the village of Kurylivka in Kharkiv Oblast. There you go. Russian troops also shelled Nikopol in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast early on the 13th, killing a 64-year-old man and damaging his house. So, yep, they are still hammering away at the Ukrainians relentlessly. On the other hand, there have been explosions in Mariupol. Don't know what the details are, other than the Mangush part of the Mariupol district, according to the location of the occupiers, was hit. Fast cars are already speeding down the street. Um, there you go. Don't know any other details. Then there is this breaking news, or this was at least, goodness me, yesterday morning. Haven't reported it yet. In Moscow, in the middle of the night, there was a fire, a powerful fire in the area of the Gazprom Nafta refinery. This is significant given that it's potentially another refinery that has been hit or is on fire. I might have reported that. I don't know. Anyway, it's been a crazy couple of days. Um, Right, Edward Hunter Christie says here, and I tell you what, I know I keep complaining about Elon Musk, and then some of you who love him try and defend him to the hilt. But then when you listen to what he actually says, there is absolutely no excuse to defend this man anymore. None. Edward Hunter Christie says, not that this is news, but Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson are both directly at war against Ukraine. There is no other interpretation, and I believe that for millions of people in the free world, this makes these two men enemies of everything we stand for. They must be opposed. So Elon Musk says this demands closer scrutiny. What's he talking about? Saying that we need to look at this. It sounds like it's good and needs to be paid attention to. Well, it's Tucker Carlson's latest Twitter or X show. He has this TV show on that's hosted by X. The Ukrainian government cancelled elections, says Tucker Carlson, and killed an American journalist. Not true. Congress is about to send them another $60 billion. JD Vance is trying to stop it. So this is I presume, an interview of JD Vance for his show where he's platforming someone who is spreading disinformation about Ukraine, whilst also Tucker Carlson is spreading disinformation about Ukraine. It's just lies, lies, lies. And he is an absolute tool. And Elon Musk is platforming him and celebrating what he has to say. Then Josh Rogan here says Elon Musk is now urging Americans to contact. I mean, this is terrible. Elon Musk is terrible. Sorry. He's urging Americans to contact members of Congress to urge them not to support Ukraine funding. Quote, this is from Elon Musk. This spending does not help Ukraine. Having all these boys die for nothing is wrong. Like those Ukrainians are going out there and fighting for nothing. How insulting is that? How dare he project onto those people what their intentions are in fighting for Ukraine? That they are fighting for nothing. How dare he? It's disgusting. I've met these people. Has he? Has he come to Ukraine and met Ukrainians fighting on the front lines? No. No, he hasn't. The man should be dismissed. However, he is the most powerful single human being in the world, arguably. He has vast influence on the many millions of people that absolutely love him. And he comes out with this grade A BS. Shameful stuff. Imagine telling Ukrainians fighting to protect their families and their towns they're dying for nothing. It's disgraceful. Absolutely. And yeah, it's just makes my blood boil. Quote, Russia is now in a stronger position than a year ago. Ukraine needs the help of the West to turn the situation around, the head of Norway's intelligence has said. Absolutely correct. China does not supply Russia with weapons, but machines, vehicles, electronics, and spare parts, that make weapons. Yeah, anyway, that's enough for me for tonight. It is almost 1 o'clock in Ukraine. I've got an early start tomorrow, so I better get some shut eye. Take care. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate your wonderful support. Thanks to all the members who are awesome. Take care. Speak soon.